Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
At Sierra, discover great deals on top brand workout gear, like high-quality bikes, which might lead to another discovery. Getting back on the saddle isn't always comfortable. Good news is Sierra has massage guns. And chafe wipes, too. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Hello there and welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast and our women's football show. And at the weekend, there was another victory for the Reds, but this one was slightly different to some of the others that we've seen so far this season because it was, in fact, the big local derby down at the Don Amott Stadium against Derby County Women. And Adam, our women's football correspondent, is here with me today. So, Adam, you were at the game at Mickleover. Talk me through what your emotions were, because it ran a little bit closer than we'd like, didn't it?
It sure did. I mean, it was a really weird game. I mean, we had a lot of the ball in the first half and we used the ball quite well. We had a couple of chances. Mel Johnson went past the goalkeeper and put it in the side netting. You know, we had a couple of balls into the box that were dangerous. Molly Green had a chance cleared off the line by the goalkeeper. You know, it was one of those halves where realistically it went how we thought it would go, just not with the goals how we thought that they would go.
And of course, you know, I guess this is another area where the women's game and the men's game have so many parallels because, frankly, when it's a local derby, all the rules kind of go out the window a little bit, don't they?
Yeah, it definitely felt like that. It did have some bit of meat to it. There were bigger challenges flying in than normal. Well, I think one of the biggest positives from the game was that it was pretty much, well, when I say pretty much, it may have been near enough sold out. There wasn't a lot of space around the ground. You know, all the standing parts had loads of people in it, was, you know, which is really good to see. But yeah, you know, it was a really good match, really good atmosphere in the ground. I would say it's about 50-50, maybe slightly more Forest fans than Derby, to be honest.
Yeah, and this is a sign that, of course, that the good people of Nottingham are getting behind the women's team. Before we go any further, let's go into the Forest team news. So now I'm looking at this team sheet, and as somebody who's new to the women's game, I'm looking at that and I'm going, I'm not sure I can spot 4 defenders in there. So firstly, what was the formation? And then run us through who played where.
It's a bit of a weird one. So it sort of was a 3 at the back, and then you had sort of Nat Johnson slotting in as a left centre back. I think it was more the fact that we felt that we'd have a lot of the ball, and we thought that we could dominate the game, and it's kind of exactly what happened. But it did work in the sense that first half we had a lot of the ball, we had a lot of chances. But when Derby broke, and this is how Derby actually played today, and to be honest, I think this was the perfect game plan for them, is that they play a lot like Nuno's Forest does. They were defensively solid enough. They did give us some chances, but they were solid enough, and then they caught us on the break, and that's where the penalty came from for Derby. They sort of caught us on the break with one ball sort of over the top to the side, and then a lovely bit of work by the Derby player that sort of baited us into the tackle to give away the penalty. So very effective first half tactics by Derby for sure, but the Forest setup definitely a 3 back, which I would wager to say that Cardi probably wouldn't be looking to do again because it was a bit up and down.
So a different approach to normal. Then, again, looking at the team sheet, I can see loads and loads of attacking players in there. Sophie Domingo, Mel Johnson, Charlie Wellings, Cara Howe. There's lots of attacking intent there. So do you reckon that was the intention from Carly to try and maybe steamroller Derby a little bit?
I think so, yeah. I think you play into your strengths, don't you? And I think that our strength this season has been scoring goals. We only conceded 4 goals this season, and one of them being that Derby penalty this weekend. But, I think Carly's plan was probably looking at it thinking, actually, we've been sound enough defensively. We probably don't need to have 4 at the back. We can probably go with 3, and we could have a bit more of an attacking intent and play some good football, which we definitely did at times in the first half. But there's also a couple of injuries that we've got as well. So it may have been slightly injury led as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and as you mentioned, Forest did create the chances. Charlie Wellings hit a shot wide after some good work from Casey Howe on the wing. You mentioned Mel Johnson's chance where she went through on goal after a pass from Sophie Domingo, but she could only hit the side netting. And then also a saved effort from Molly Green. But there was, as you mentioned, that penalty to Derby is a foul on Kira Rai. Talk us through that, Adam.
Yeah, it's definitely a penalty. It was fantastic work by Kira Rai, to be fair. She just gets into the box and she carries the ball a long way. I think the initial thought was that she was offside, but she carries the ball a long way brilliantly, puts through the legs of a Forest defender, and then she taps the ball away, and the penalty is unfortunately given away. So it was definitely frustrating, but it was a good move. It was a good bit of work by Kira Rai, and to be honest, it was a penalty that was drilled right into the bottom left corner, which I think if you're being really harsh, you could say that the keeper could have got down a bit quicker to it. But I mean, it's a penalty, and you can't be too harsh about that, really.
Yeah, I think when it goes in the corner, as you say, there's only so much you can be critical of the keeper. And of course, that penalty came just before half time. So Daisy Hurt scored the goal, and it meant that actually the hosts went in at half time with a 1-0 lead. So given that Forest had made those chances and then Forest then conceded that penalty, what was the mood amongst the fans? Were you a bit deflated?
I think it was one of surprise more than anything. I think people were very surprised by what had happened, and there was, like I say, there was probably more Forest fans kind of expecting to see a fairly comprehensive win. I mean, that was certainly the expectation of myself going into the game, and it was a frustrating first half. I mean, realistically, Derby probably. I don't think I'd be too harsh in saying they had that one chance and they scored. It was the penalty incident. Other than that, they really didn't have a lot in the first half, and especially Mel Johnson's shot going begging. It was definitely a frustrated feeling at half time. Couldn't see why we were 1-0 down, but the only option was to come out second half well. And to be honest, the first 5 or 10 minutes, we absolutely didn't really.
Yeah. So yeah, 1-0 at half time to Derby County. And in the second half, like you said, Forest were under pressure in those first few minutes, and they had to defend. No matter how many players you got on the pitch, you have to defend at certain times. And it looks as though Derby were piling on the pressure.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't helped when Nat Johnson unfortunately tried to play a bit of a back pass to Molly Green, and Molly she sort of let it run across her body because I think she did. I don't think she thought she had someone behind her, but the Derby striker ran through on goal, and it was a great bit of defending in the end by Forest, absolute last ditch defending to stop it being 2-0. And at that point, even with the goals that we do have in the side, it felt like one of those games where if we'd gone 2-0 down, it would have been a very precarious situation for us.
And would have felt very much like playing a local derby where the rules go out the window. So Forest did get back into the match. So just past the hour mark, they had a good chance. Casey Howe once again getting involved and picking out Mel Johnson, but again, just not quite able to convert. And we saw Carly Davis make substitutions to try and get that equaliser. So Millie Chandarana and Katie Dungate were brought on respectively. Did those changes, and was the mood that Forest were going to attack and try and rely on that ability to get goals?
I think Millie Chandara, to be fair, what she's really good at is she's got so much energy.
Mm-hmm.
She's an absolute Duracell bunny in the middle of the park. So bringing her on was, it was definitely a good move at the time. I think it was a weird one for Forest because I think Sophie Domingo obviously got a start today, and I thought she played really well. We had a chance where, like the one that you just mentioned there, where Mel Johnson's chance. If you've not seen it yet, have a look on YouTube because I don't know how she missed it still. Knocked her at the back post and she just missed an absolute sitter. But yeah, look, I mean, we were soon back in the game, and the substitutions definitely did make a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it comes down to that we had to be patient. And I think when you have these games and you have these local derby games, we've seen it from the men's side against Derby before, not for a long while, obviously. But you've got to be patient and you've got to hang in there. It's not always about who's the better team. It's not always about, this Forest team, we expect them to trounce everyone. It's just not how it works sometimes, unfortunately. So, but I think when we got the goal, it was, first of all, it was a very well taken goal as well. I'm not sure if you've seen the goal, Rick, but I mean, it was taken very well.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was, I think, a couple of things which were worth noting. There were fewer than 10 minutes to go, so the pressure that Forest were putting on, did pay dividends. And no, I haven't seen the goal yet, actually, but it was Charlie Wellings who found the bottom corner with a half volley. And just describe the goal to us.
Kind of came out of nowhere, so it was just a ball over the top. And it was one of those balls, when they sort of they go over the top and they're bouncing, and it's like, if you're a defender, well, when I play football anyway, defensively, you just absolutely hammer that into the crowd, or you don't take a risk, and it bounces probably 2 or 3 times, and Charlie Wellings gets on it probably about 24, 25 yards out. She just hits it, and it completely caught the Derby goalkeeper off guard. Like, she absolutely didn't expect it. It found the bottom corner. The Reds fans behind the goal were ecstatic, and it was what we deserved. But I mean, that shows you what Charlie Wellings can do. She can score goals. She's got a wonderful technique on her strike, and it was, like I say, a well-deserved goal.
Yeah, and I mean, again, that's a sign of the confidence that Forest have to score goals, then, isn't it? The fact that Charlie kind of saw the opportunity and took it in a really opportunistic way. Now, there were also further chances. So Sophie Domingo, who you'd mentioned earlier, and we talked about her waiting for her chance to kind of start games, and how she'd started the season and then been edged out by Mel Johnson. So they were both playing in this one. And Sophie did have a chance. Katie Dungate was also denied from close range. We had 2 more substitutions, so Bridget Galloway and Amy Sims. So again, more attacking intent coming into the game. But it took until stoppage time before Forest had the chance to actually win the game. So again, just describe to us what you saw as leading up to the penalty.
Yeah, look, I mean, we've followed Forest for a number of years, both of us. You obviously a lot longer than me.
Thanks. Yeah.
No swipe at your age at all there. We know it's never easy with Forest, and that doesn't change here. The Sophie Domingo chance you mentioned, Ken, was just it was bizarre. It really was. Great bit of work by Howe on the wing. She beats a man, and she just floats an absolutely delightful ball back to the back post. And Sophie's there. She's by herself, 4 or 5 yards out, and she just heads it into the ground. The goalkeeper saves it and does really well, but there's not a lot of excuse to be had there. She does need to score, but the penalty was a weird one because when you're there, you can't really see it. So obviously, when I've watched it back, it is the most obvious handball you're going to get, right? But you can't see it in the ground necessarily. But yeah, look, the shot's is directed goalwards. It hits the Derby player's arm. It's a stonewall penalty. It might be one of those where it's harsh because what can she do about it? Her arm's in a very unnatural position. It's handball. It's definitely a penalty.
Yeah, and bottom line is, and I've said this before in the men's match reports, I think if your arms, like you say, if your arm's not down by your side and then the ball hits it, you can't complain too much most of the time. Now, what I will say, I think you and I have done quite a few match reports on the men's team together, and we've talked about players like Brennan Johnson and Morgan Gibbs-White and Chris Wood scoring penalties for the men's team. And the last time the men's team had a penalty, I was reporting with George on the Brighton match, and I remember saying, it never looked like there's any doubt, and Chris Wood was going to score it. And I have to say, even though I knew the result, when I watched Charlie's penalty, I still had a moment of doubt in my mind because I don't know, it could be camera angles, it could just be that whole thing of the nerves of it being a local derby or whatever. But how did it feel to you as a fan? Were you looking at Charlie going, she's going to get this?
I think probably out of any player in the Forest side, I think Charlie Wellings is the player that I trust most in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Not just who's on the pitch, but who's also gone off. She's absolutely clinical. She gets out half a chance and she'll score. She took the penalty really well as well. It was so calm. Just strolled up and absolutely hammered it into the far corner. It's one of those where if the goalkeeper went the right way, I don't even know she would have saved it. She hit it that hard. So.
I think it's that casual approach that she had that made me a little bit kind of.
Yeah, Lyle Taylor-esque, just sort of having a stroll up to it.
Yeah.
But no, it was a really well taken penalty. Look, it's exactly what Forest deserved. I think there's definitely an element of we made it hard for ourselves, but we did, and I can't say we didn't because we did. But on another day, it's 4 or 5-1 before that penalty happens. We had tons of chances, absolutely sitters missed, and you get punished. And it was similar to the Burnley game actually in that respect at home, where Burnley are a better side than Derby. Don't get me wrong, but we had a lot of chances and we just couldn't put them away. But I really did think that this one would be, a draw and 2 dropped points. And look, with Wolves playing how they are at the minute, dropped points are not something that you can afford. It's such a cutthroat league. There's such a small margin for error. So it was a massive 3 points for the women, and we've got to take that into the Liverpool Feds game coming up as well.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
The win keeps Forest, of course, at the top of the table, but it is relatively tight at the top. So Forest have played 9, won 7, drawn 2. They've got 23 points, and then Wolves are in second place, and they've drawn 1 and lost 1, so they're only a point behind us. Once again, though, the big difference is the goal difference is absolutely imperious. Forest have got a plus 37 goal difference, and the next team to offer anything like that is Rugby Borough, who, of course, we recently played, who are on plus 24. Wolves are on plus 18. So that goal difference is worth the proverbial extra point, isn't it? Now, the next match is actually in the National League Cup. So that is going to come up next Sunday against Peterborough, and then the team return to league action the following Sunday at the City Ground against Liverpool Feds. And Liverpool Feds are another one of these teams who are kind of making up the sort of the top third of the table. They're currently in 6th place on 16 points. Firstly, do you see Carly Davis making changes for the cup match before returning to league action?
I think we've got a big squad, and I think she will make some changes. It's an opportunity to progress in the cup, and I would hope, at the very least, and I would almost expect that we will we will win this game and we will progress in the cup. It's a big opportunity for us, but. Yeah, I think you'll see a lot of different names on the team sheet, the fringe players. Like, I'm kind of expecting potentially Bridget Galloway to start this one. Amy Sims might get a start in this one as well. I think it's just about rotating the squad and believing in the squad that you have. Obviously, not going to be an easy game at all. It's going to be a really tough game. Peterborough are a good side. It's a weird one. Obviously, they're top of their league. They've not lost a game in the league yet, so. They're coming in this with a lot of form. They're coming in this thinking that this is an opportunity for them to win as well. So it's going to be tough.
just for my knowledge and anyone else listening, what division are Peterborough in?
They're in the Women's National League Division 1. So obviously different leagues to Forest, but they are, I mean, they've got some fantastic players. They've got Katie Middleton as well, who Forest fans might remember. She made over sort of 50, 60 appearances for the Reds. So it'd be nice to see her back at the City Ground. But yeah, look, it's going to be a really tough game. And Peterborough are going to be no mug whatsoever. They're in the same league as Notts County for all of those wondering. In the Midlands section of that league, so we've got the Midlands, the North, and then you've got the South East and West. So you've got, what's that, 48 women's teams making up those leagues. So
yeah,
it's actually really good. It's so nice to see that the women's leagues are being made up with a lot of clubs actually having a women's team, putting the money into the women's team. On a side note, it is nice to see Notts County have a women's team again, because obviously once upon a time they had a wonderful women's team that unfortunately was disbanded. So no, it's good for the game, absolutely.
Yeah, and Liverpool Feds, are they affiliated to Liverpool FC, or is it just that they are a women's team from Liverpool?
So they're not affiliated with Liverpool, because Liverpool do have a women's team in the WSL. So Liverpool Feds use, if you look at their badge, they use a really similar badge,
that's what confused me.
I think it's obviously inspired. I don't believe
they've got a liver bird on there, listeners. They've got a liver bird on there. So yeah, so I don't know. Maybe they are. Maybe they are the FC United to Manchester United in that sense. And then so that'll be the return to league action. And then after that, if we go into early November, and of course we will be back with you reporting on those matches. But as we go into early November, the cup draw has been made for the Adobe Women's FA Cup, and Forest will be playing against Boldmere St Michael's Women. I mean, let's be honest. Once again, given the trajectory that Forest have shown, they will be looking to progress, if we put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's absolutely a David versus Goliath matchup, that is. So yeah, I mean, I think they're in tier 3 or 4 of the Midlands Women's League, so they're quite low down the pyramid. But how many times have we seen teams low down the pyramid go and beat Championship sides, Premier League sides? You can't take any game for granted. Absolutely,
and as you mentioned earlier with the other cup, the National Cup. It's a good opportunity for Carly Davis to give the players who are on the bench and some of the fringe players a bit of a run out, maybe to continue experimenting with things like formations and different combinations. So I think there will be some questions to be answered if it's not a relatively comfortable win. So I'm just going to say thank you very much, Adam, for your expert reporting on that. And the Women's National League Cup game against Peterborough, Forest have been drawn at home, but it's going to be played at Grange Park, and then they'll return to the City Ground for the Liverpool Feds match. As always, we will be back with reports and the latest news from the women's team, so keep an eye on our feed for that. In the meantime, we will have your Friday 5, a Forest News Roundup, coming up at the end of this week, and then after the Palace match next Monday, we will have a report on that. In the meantime, if you haven't caught our Forest Ramble discussion podcast, well, Adam, you made a very welcome appearance there talking about the men's team, and we discussed, amongst other things, That's Fine for That tweet, and also the Man City versus Premier League issue and what ramifications it could have for other teams in the division. So do have a listen if you can. All of our links are at 1865.football, and we try not to say this every week, but if you are listening and you do like what you hear, then feel free to send us a review or share our content via your socials, because that way we can get more listeners and we can spread the word about basically the good stuff that we like to think that we're doing as Forest fans. In the meantime, thank you to Adam, thank you to you for listening, and come on you Reds.
podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.